You know that old saying, the customer is always right? Well, consider this video a formal investigation into that claim. We've unearthed 49 stories from the retail front lines that suggest the customer is not only wrong, but spectacularly, hilariously, and sometimes frighteningly delusional. These aren't your typical, it didn't fit excuses. This is a journey into the abyss of human logic, one returned item at a time. 1. Let's kick things off with a true intellectual heavyweight. A man returned a smoke detector because, in his words, it failed to put out the fire. Apparently, while his kitchen was going up in flames, he just stood there, waiting for this little plastic puck on the ceiling to do something more heroic than just beep. His argument to the baffled employee was, "What's the point of detecting if it doesn't fight? Sir, it's a smoke detector, not a tiny Rambo in a plastic case. Did you expect it to deploy a miniature fire hose or perhaps try to argue the fire into submission? Its only job is to shriek at you to get out before you do something even dumber." 2. Next, a woman demanded a full refund for her inflatable hot tub, citing a critical design flaw. The bubbles weren't as fancy as a real spa. When asked for specifics, she sighed with deep, soul-crushing disappointment and clarified, "It just felt like air." Ma'am, and I ask this with all the sincerity I can muster, what did you imagine bubbles were filled with? The distilled laughter of angels? Tiny, effervescent ghosts? You bought a vinyl tub from a big box store, not a teleportation device to a luxury resort. The fact that the bubbles are made of air is, quite literally, the entire feature. 3. A bookstore dealt with a customer returning a novel because the ending was sad. I had to read that one twice. Her complaint wasn't that the book was poorly written. It was that, "No one told me it would make me feel things." The sheer audacity of an author, daring to craft a story that elicits a human emotion. Perhaps books now need a new warning label. Caution. May contain a well-developed plot that results in an emotional investment. What's next? Suing a comedian for making you laugh without your explicit written consent? 4. Get ready for this one. A man walked into a store to return a chocolate bar that had melted into a brown, gooey mess. The reason for this tragic product failure? He left it on the dashboard of his hot car all afternoon. When the cashier stated the painfully obvious, the man was genuinely indignant, insisting there should be a warning label. A warning that chocolate, a solid made of cocoa butter and sugar, turns to liquid when heated. What's next? A warning on water that it's wet? A disclaimer on the sun that it's bright? Some things are supposed to be covered in kindergarten, not on a candy wrapper. 5. Now for a masterclass in outsourcing responsibility. A woman attempted to return a gallon of milk because it had expired. That seems reasonable until you find out it had expired 2 months prior. She wasn't a day late, she had been aging it in her fridge like a fine wine. Her argument was that the store should have warned her not to wait so long. How? Should the grocery store now employ a team of life coaches to manage your pantry? Okay, ma'am. Remember to consume the milk before it achieves sentience. The expiration date is the warning, you magnificent creature. 6. Here we have a man who has blurred the line between buying and renting. He tried to return a suit that was clearly worn, reeking faintly of wedding cake and regret. His defense? He only wore it for a few hours because he wasn't planning on staying for the whole reception. He'd only danced in it, so it was practically new. Marinated in the sweat of the cha-cha slide, but practically new. When the store refused, he was heard muttering about needing to crash another wedding to get his money's worth. That's a financial strategy, I suppose. A deeply flawed, socially parasitic one, but a strategy nonetheless. 7. In a stunning display of misplaced expectations, a woman returned a bottle of perfume because it didn't attract men the way it promised. To prove her point, she performed a live and deeply awkward demonstration for the clerk. She sprayed herself generously, looked around the store expectantly, and after a moment of crushing silence declared, "See? Nothing." Ma'am, this is a fragrance counter, not a wizard's workshop. That bottle contains scented alcohol, not a magical love potion. It's designed to cover up the smell of desperation, not cure it. 8. Welcome to the future. where our ambitions have officially outpaced our technology. A man returned a robot vacuum, complaining that it didn't walk the dog. He had apparently taken the term smart home and run with it all the way into a science fiction fantasy. He genuinely expected this little disc to put a leash on Sparky and take him for a walk. The irony that it was excellent at sucking up the hair from the very dog it wouldn't walk was completely lost on him. He brought it back grumbling, "Next you'll tell me it can't do my laundry." "Yes, sir. And just to manage expectations, your toaster won't be filing your taxes either." 9. Here's one for the annals of misplaced blame. A man attempted to return a full set of golf clubs after playing in a weekend tournament. His reason? They were unlucky. He insisted, with the conviction of a man who's seen a ghost, that his swing had been mysteriously off ever since he bought them. He wasn't just slicing the ball, he was a victim of a cruel, graphite-shafted curse. When the manager refused the refund, explaining that the clubs were not, in fact, possessed by the spirit of a terrible golfer, the man sighed dramatically. "Fine," he conceded. "I'll just donate them to some other poor soul who doesn't know they're cursed." "Sir, there's a simpler, non-supernatural explanation for your performance. It's called being bad at golf." 10. A man stormed up to a customer service desk, furious, and slammed a beach towel down on the counter. His chief complaint? It got covered in sand. I'll let that sink in for a moment. When the employee, likely fighting every instinct to just walk away, gently reminded him that this tends to happen when you take a towel to a beach, the man was not swayed. He sighed with immense frustration and muttered, "Yeah, I just thought it would, repel it." Ah yes, the mythical sand-proof towel, woven from pure Teflon and wishful thinking. Sorry to break it to you, buddy, but that technology doesn't exist. You're looking for something called a lawn chair. 11. Behold the tale of a man who thought he bought a magic wand that cuts grass. He tried to return a perfectly functional lawnmower because, as he put it, his grass didn't look like the one in the commercial. He genuinely expected to achieve a pristine, Augusta-level putting green after one pass. When the store clerk, navigating this conversation with the grace of a bomb disposal expert, asked if he had watered, fertilized, or aerated the lawn, the man seemed confused. "I thought the mower did all that." "Sir, it's a machine with a spinning blade. It's not a live-in groundskeeper with a degree in horticulture. The only thing it's designed to do is give your weeds a haircut." 12. A man walked into a store and placed a fully assembled 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle on the counter, demanding a refund. The defect, you ask? It was too hard to put together. The employee, understandably confused, pointed out that he had, in fact, successfully completed the puzzle. The man just shrugged, defeated. "Yeah, but it wasn't fun." "So, let me get this straight. You're returning a product not because it was broken, but because the very challenge it was designed to provide caused you mental anguish? That's not a product return, sir. That's an existential crisis." The box says puzzle, not guaranteed dopamine hit. 13. A man returned a brand new telescope, seething with disappointment. His problem wasn't blurry stars or a faulty lens. No, his issue was that it didn't show any alien spaceships. He had apparently spent 3 consecutive nights glued to the eyepiece, fully expecting to witness an intergalactic invasion or at least a flying saucer doing donuts around the moon. When all he saw were celestial bodies that have been there for billions of years, he marched back into the store, convinced the product was a sham. "This thing's broken," he declared. "It's hiding the truth." "Sir, perhaps the truth is that you're just not that interesting to alien life forms." 15. Timing is everything, especially in retail. A customer walked into a department store in the middle of July and tried to return a Christmas sweater. The garish, reindeer-covered garment was in perfect condition. His reasoning was simple, yet profound. It's not Christmas anymore. The cashier, bless their patient soul, tried to explain the concept of seasonal clothing and the forward progression of time. The man was unconvinced. He just shook his head and delivered a line that should be carved in stone. "That's your opinion. You can't argue with that." The man lives in his own non-linear timeline where refunds are always in season. 16. A woman tried to return a high-end sleeping bag, not because it was uncomfortable, but because it didn't stop the bears from sniffing around her tent. She seemed to be under the impression that she had purchased a portable, fabric-based force field, not just an insulated sack for sleeping. She was genuinely outraged that this piece of camping equipment didn't provide an impenetrable barrier against curious, 1,000-pound predators. "I paid good money to not be bear bait," she yelled at the clerk. "Ma'am, what you're looking for isn't sold in a sporting goods store. It's called a cabin, made of thick logs, with no food inside." 17. Let's talk about the fine art of cooking, or in this case, the fine art of blaming your tools. A man returned a used frying pan, and when the employee asked what the problem was, he stated with utter seriousness that it didn't cook food the way he liked. The employee, probably expecting a story about a warped base or a peeling non-stick coating, asked for clarification. The man's response? "My pancakes came out too thick, and that's never happened before." Sir, a frying pan is a flat piece of metal that gets hot. It has no opinion on your batter consistency. That's not a manufacturing defect, that's a user error issue. The pan provides the heat, the culinary genius, or in this case, the lack thereof, has to come from you. 18. Some product names are subtle, others are not. A customer brought back a slow cooker with a major complaint. It took too long to cook. After a moment of what I can only imagine was profound, stunned silence, the store clerk gently pointed out that the word slow is literally in the product's name. The customer, completely unfazed by this revelation, just muttered, "Yeah, but I thought that was just a suggestion." A suggestion? As if the engineers who designed it were just spitballing ideas? Let's call it a slow cooker, but maybe it'll be fast for some people. Who knows? Sir, if you want something to cook your food quickly, might I introduce you to a revolutionary device called a microwave? 19. Here's a problem most of us can only dream of having. A man tried to return a winning lottery ticket. Not a dud, not a misprint, but a multi-million-dollar jackpot winner. His official complaint? The prize was too big and was now causing too much stress in his family. He genuinely wanted a refund for the single dollar he spent on the ticket, hoping to undo his good fortune and return to his simpler, non-millionaire life. He argued the lottery corporation should have a warning. Caution: may result in life-changing wealth and awkward Thanksgiving dinners. Sir, I'm pretty sure there are 300 million people who would gladly take that defect off your hands. This isn't a return. It's the most absurd humble brag in recorded history. 20. Alright, let's take a brief dark detour. Someone once tried to return a used coffin to a funeral home. I'll repeat that. A used coffin. The reason provided for this highly unusual return request was simply, we didn't end up needing it. No further explanation was offered. No details were given. And frankly, this is one of those rare customer service scenarios where you probably shouldn't ask follow-up questions. You just nod slowly, process the refund if you can, and then spend the rest of the day pondering the series of events that leads to having a spare, previously occupied coffin. Some stories are better left untold. 21. A woman demanded a full refund for a Ouija board because it was, in her professional opinion, defective. Its flaw? It didn't summon anything. She insisted she did everything right. "I followed all the instructions," she explained. "Lit candles, dimmed the lights. Nothing happened." You have to admire her conviction, treating a paranormal party game like a faulty appliance. "Ma'am, I'm not sure there's a warranty that covers the whims of the spirit world. Maybe the ghosts were busy that night. Maybe they looked through the veil and decided they didn't want to talk to you. That's not a product issue. That's a supernatural social snub." 22. Some problems are truly unique. A person returned a welcome mat, not because it was frayed or faded, but because it was too friendly. Let that marinate. They explained to the confused clerk, "I don't actually want to welcome people. I just needed something for my doorway." This is a level of misanthropic planning that is almost impressive. They saw a product explicitly designed to invite people in and thought, "Yes, that's the perfect way to signal that I want to be left alone." You know they sell plain, unadorned rubber mats, right? Or perhaps a small, tasteful sign that just says no. 23. Here's a classic case of task failed successfully. A woman stormed into an electronics store to return a pair of noise-canceling headphones. She was genuinely angry. The problem? They cancel out too much noise. She recounted a harrowing tale of sitting in a coffee shop and completely missing a juicy conversation happening at the next table because the headphones were doing their job. Ma'am, that's not a bug. It's the entire feature. That's like returning a waterproof jacket because you were too dry in a rainstorm. You paid for a portable cone of silence, and that is exactly what you got. 24. A man tried to return a tent with a complaint that sounds like a riddle. His issue was that it got too dark inside. The employee, blinking in disbelief, calmly stated, "Sir, that's called shade." This explanation was not sufficient. The man crossed his arms, unsatisfied. "Yeah, but it's like, too shady." "I'm sorry, what? Too shady?" What was he expecting? A tent with a dimmer switch? A translucent canopy that would slowly cook him like a vegetable in a greenhouse? So, to be clear, you want a tent that blocks the sun, but, not so effectively? That's not a tent, sir. That's a large leaf. 25. Some people watch movies and get inspired. Others watch movies and get dangerously unrealistic expectations. A man returned a chainsaw, furious because it didn't carve ice sculptures. He had apparently seen this performed in some action movie and thought he could turn the contents of his ice maker into a gallery of frozen art. When the reality of a gas-powered, high-torque chain meeting a block of frozen water resulted in a slushy, dangerous mess instead of a delicate swan, he demanded a refund. His reasoning was that the chainsaw wasn't Hollywood grade. "Buddy, I hate to break it to you, but you're not a Hollywood stuntman. You're a guy who tried to use a wood-cutting tool for a job that requires a chisel and years of artistic training." 26. Just when you think you've heard it all, someone finds a new way to misunderstand a basic concept. A customer walked into a store holding a box of 500 disposable plastic forks. His reason for the return? They're not dishwasher safe. Let's just pause and appreciate the beautiful, tragic irony of that statement. Sir, the entire point, the very essence of the word disposable, is that you use it once and then throw it away. It's a single-use item designed specifically to avoid being washed. Did you try to run them through a cycle? I can only imagine the modern art sculpture you created on your dishwasher's heating element. That's not a product flaw. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of the English language. 27. Here we have another compelling argument for the theory that some people believe in magic. A woman tried to return a yoga mat because it wasn't improving her flexibility. The store associate, navigating this delicate situation, politely asked if she had been using it to perform stretches or yoga poses. The woman's reply was a masterpiece of misplaced confidence. "No, but I sat on it a lot." So, to be perfectly clear, she wasn't doing yoga on the mat. She expected the mat to do yoga to her. She thought she could absorb the quality of flexibility through simple proximity, like a phone charging wirelessly. That's not how it works. It's a mat, not an enchanted rug that imbues you with the powers of a contortionist. 28. The term self-cleaning can apparently be very misleading to certain people. A woman brought back a self-cleaning oven, absolutely furious that it didn't wash her dishes too. She genuinely argued that any product advertised as self-cleaning should, by logical extension, handle all of her other kitchen chores. It's a bold interpretation of a product feature. As she was leaving, rejected and dejected, she huffed, "What's next? I have to mop the floor myself." The silence from the store staff was probably the loudest yes she's ever heard. "Yes, ma'am, you do." Welcome to the harsh, non-automated reality the rest of us live in. 29. Sometimes a return isn't just a return, it's a cry for help with basic physics. A guy returned a pair of binoculars complaining that they don't work indoors. The cashier, understandably puzzled, asked what he was trying to look at. His answer, "Well, I tried to use them to watch TV from my couch, but it just made everything worse." Sir, that is precisely what would happen. Binoculars are for making distant objects appear closer. Using them on an object that is already close will turn your 60-inch high-definition screen into a blurry, incomprehensible mess of giant pixels. You didn't buy a TV enhancer, you bought a tool for birdwatching. Unless the birds are in your living room, they are not the right tool for the job. 30. Here's a heartbreaking tale of social aspirations dashed against the concrete of reality. A young man returned a skateboard because, and this is a direct quote, it didn't make him look cool. Apparently, he took his new board to the local skate park, attempted a trick, and promptly wiped out in front of a crowd of unimpressed teenagers. His conclusion wasn't that he lacked skill or balance, but that the board itself was defective in its coolness-providing properties. Sorry, buddy, but cool is not a feature that comes included in the box. That's a software problem, not a hardware one. And unfortunately for you, there's no return policy that covers a bruised ego. 31. In a world of ever-advancing technology, it can be hard to keep up. But this is next level. A woman tried to return a consumer drone because it didn't deliver her groceries. She seemed to believe she had purchased a personal, automated shopping assistant. She described how she sent it off in the direction of the supermarket, presumably with a shopping list attached, and was shocked when it never came back with her milk and eggs. Ma'am, you didn't send out an errand boy. You just released your expensive flying camera into the wild. I hope it finds a nice tree to live in. That's not a product return. That's you reporting a missing pet. 32. Duct tape. The legendary silver adhesive, celebrated in commercials and pop culture as a tool that can fix anything. Well, almost anything. A guy in New York returned a half-used roll of duct tape, claiming it didn't hold things together like in the commercials. The complaint itself is a thing of beauty in its sheer vagueness. What on earth was he trying to do? The mind reels with possibilities. Was he trying to patch a hole in the space-time continuum? Reattach a wing to a 747? Given the tape's reputation for it to fail so spectacularly, his project must have been ambitious on a mythological scale. You can't just return duct tape because your plan to build a suspension bridge out of it didn't work. 33. Here's a story that perfectly marries bad fashion with even worse logic. A woman tried to return a scuba mask in the middle of winter, claiming it ruined her ski trip. When the employee dug deeper into this bizarre complaint, it turned out she had worn the scuba mask on the ski slopes instead of actual goggles. Her reasoning? She thought it would make her look like an underwater explorer. I'm not making this up. When the mask inevitably fogged up, rendering her completely blind while sliding down a mountain, she didn't question her decision. No, she blamed the store that sold her a piece of equipment for its intended underwater use. Ma'am, that's not a defective product. That's a defective survival instinct. 34. You have to feel for customer service employees sometimes. A man walked into a pet store holding a used litter box and slammed it on the counter. "I want a refund," he announced. "My cat refuses to use it." The cashier, likely taking a step back, hesitated before posing a perfectly sarcastic question. "Sir, do you want us to speak to your cat about it?" But the joke was lost on him. The man just nodded seriously, as if this was the most reasonable and expected level of service. He genuinely thought the store should dispatch a feline diplomat to negotiate a treaty with his picky pet. "I'm sorry, sir, we don't have a cat psychologist on staff and the return policy doesn't cover feline stubbornness." 35. There are product tests, and then there's just willful destruction. A customer brought back a baby stroller that looked like it had lost a fight with a wood chipper. It was completely wrecked. His reason for the return? It wasn't strong enough. After some gentle probing, the truth came out. He had been using the stroller, a device designed to transport a 20-pound human infant, to haul heavy loads of firewood from his backyard. When the store, for obvious reasons, refused the refund, he shook his head in disgust and muttered, "Well, that's just false advertising." "Sir, the box says baby stroller, not lumberjack stroller. The pictures on the box are of a smiling infant, not a burly man named Gus carrying a load of oak." 36. In our modern world, we've invited technology into every corner of our lives. But for one man, it got a little too personal. He returned a brand new smartwatch, his complaint being that it was too judgmental. When the employee asked him to elaborate, the man fumed, "It kept telling me to stand up and exercise." He was personally offended that a device he purchased to monitor his activity was, in fact, monitoring his activity. Sir, that's not judgment. That is its entire purpose. You bought a tiny wrist-mounted personal trainer, and now you're mad that it's trying to train you. Did you want a watch that would just pat you on the back and say, "You know what? Stay on the couch. You've earned it." 37. This next gentleman is a true innovator in the field of effortless fitness. He tried to return a treadmill, arguing that it didn't help him lose weight. The employee, assuming the machine was broken, asked if he had actually used it. The man admitted, "No, but I thought just having it in the house would work." But it gets better. To justify his logic, he compared it to a lucky charm, saying, "You don't have to rub a rabbit's foot for it to work, right?" I am speechless. He genuinely believed that this 300-pound piece of machinery would shed his pounds for him through sheer proximity. This isn't a return. This is a profound misunderstanding of the laws of physics and biology. 38. It's rare that a product exceeding expectations becomes grounds for a complaint, but here we are. A woman returned a vacuum cleaner because, in her words, it sucked too much. The employee was about to explain that powerful suction is generally considered a positive trait in a vacuum, but she cut him off. "No, you don't get it," she insisted. "It's too powerful. I almost lost a sock." The horror. The near calamity of a sock being properly cleaned. The best part of this entire exchange? She asked if they had a gentler model. A gentler vacuum? For what exactly? For giving your carpets a light dusting? For politely asking the pet hair to leave? 39. Relationships are complicated. And sometimes when things go wrong, we look for someone or something to blame. A woman demanded a refund for an engagement ring, telling the jeweler that it didn't work. The jeweler, confused, asked what could possibly be wrong with a brand new ring. Her explanation was a masterpiece of blame deflection. "Well," she stated matter-of-factly, "he asked me to marry him, and I said no. So, obviously, the ring is defective." Ma'am, with all due respect, I don't think the carat weight of the diamond was the deciding factor in that conversation. That's not a defective product. That's just a very clear answer. 40. This one is a grim little nugget of retail despair. A man returned a pet goldfish in a Ziploc bag filled with water. His complaint was simple and direct. It just sits there. The store employee, seeing the motionless creature floating sideways, delicately asked the obvious question, "Sir, is it alive?" The man frowned, poked the bag with his finger, and replied, "I don't know, but I feel like I should get store credit either way." The sheer, unwavering confidence. Whether the pet he bought is alive or has passed on to the great fishbowl in the sky is irrelevant to him. He wants his money back. This isn't a customer. This is a man who sees life itself as a refundable commodity. 41. Let's discuss the concept of permanence, or the lack thereof. A man tried to return a set of kitchen knives after owning and using them for a full year. The shocking defect he discovered? They got dull over time. The store associate, trying to process this complaint, gently explained that all knives require occasional sharpening to maintain their edge. The man simply blinked, as if this was some arcane secret of the universe being revealed to him for the first time. "Oh," he said. "I thought they just stayed sharp forever." Sir, unless you bought the mythical blade Excalibur, that is not how physics works. Metal grinds against other objects and becomes less sharp. This isn't a product flaw. It's a concept called wear and tear. 42. Sometimes the problem isn't the product, but the person who bought it. A man marched into a pet store holding an empty but clearly used hamster cage. He slammed it on the counter, looking furious. "I want my money back," he demanded. The employee, seeing no obvious defect, hesitated. "What happened to the hamster?" The man sighed dramatically, as if recounting a great personal tragedy. "I bought the cage, but then I realized I don't want a hamster." "I'm sorry, what? You're returning a product because of a sudden, post-purchase change of heart about acquiring a living creature? That's not a return. That's you asking the store to subsidize your own indecisiveness." 43. Here's a lesson in basic load management. A man returned a high-quality hiking backpack after a trip, complaining it was too heavy when full. A reasonable complaint, perhaps, until the cashier asked what he had packed inside it. His reply, "Oh, just normal things. A tent, some canned food, a couple gallons of water, and a full cast-iron skillet." A cast-iron skillet. Sir, you weren't packing for a hike. You were packing to build a small, indestructible cabin. I think we've identified the source of the weight problem, and it's not the lightweight nylon backpack. It's the 10-pound piece of cookware you decided was essential for a walk in the woods. 44. A woman returned a magic 8-ball, complaining that it didn't predict anything correctly. She explained that she was up for a promotion at work and had consulted the toy for guidance. The 8-ball told her, "Ask again later." So she did, multiple times. Her frustration grew with each shake. "It kept changing answers," she fumed. "Ma'am, it's a hollow plastic ball with a 20-sided die, floating in blue liquid. It's not a direct line to a Wall Street analyst or a certified career advisor. Its entire function is to give you vague, random answers. You might as well ask your toaster for financial advice." 45. We've all grumbled about the amount of air in a bag of chips, but this next person elevated it to an art form. They returned an empty potato chip bag, demanding a refund specifically for the air. And they came with evidence. They presented a separate sealed plastic baggie, which they claimed contained the original air captured from the chip bag. "I paid for chips, not for this premium, cheese-dusted atmosphere," they insisted. "I want a refund for the portion of the product that was just gas." You honestly have to admire the commitment. They didn't just complain. They conducted a full-blown forensic analysis and came back to claim their 37 cents. That's not a customer. That's a procurement auditor. 46. A woman returned a cookbook, claiming that the recipes didn't come out right. When the store employee asked if she had followed the instructions precisely, the woman frowned. "Well, not exactly," she admitted. "I just felt like some of the ingredients didn't belong, so I left them out. And I swapped some others." So, to summarize, she ignored the professionally developed recipes, improvised wildly, created a culinary disaster, and then blamed the book. That's the equivalent of failing a chemistry exam because you felt like mixing random chemicals together, then demanding a refund for your textbook. The problem isn't the book, ma'am. It's the cook. 47. Here's a tale of trust and betrayal, starring an inflatable mattress. A customer returned one because it completely deflated overnight. A classic, legitimate complaint. However, when the store employee inspected it, they found the air valve had been left wide open. When confronted with this evidence of user error, the customer, unwilling to admit fault, simply nodded sagely and said, "Yeah, well, I just don't trust it anymore." That's right. The mattress, through its passive compliance with the laws of air pressure, had broken his trust. Once an air mattress has wronged you by doing exactly what you told it to do, there's just no going back. 48. Some people see an appliance and see its one function. Others see a world of missed opportunities. A man returned a ceiling fan because, to his profound disappointment, it didn't cool his coffee. He had installed it directly over his kitchen table with the specific goal of having it act as a personal beverage chiller. When it just circulated the air in the room without creating a vortex of cold air aimed at his mug, he deemed it useless and dragged it back to the store. "What's the point of moving air if it doesn't multitask?" he grumbled. "Sir, that's not a fan problem. That's an engineering fantasy." 49. We'll end with a man who fought nature and blamed his equipment for losing. He walked into a store with the mangled remains of an umbrella. His reason for the return? It collapsed in strong winds. The cashier, following protocol, asked how strong the wind was. The man looked off into the distance as if recalling a great battle and replied, "Like hurricane strong." "Sir, an umbrella is designed to protect you from rain. It is not personal protective equipment for a Category 4 storm. At that point, you don't need a better umbrella. You need to be in a basement, questioning your life choices, not the structural integrity of a $5 accessory." And there you have it. 49 monuments to human stupidity. Now, I refuse to believe these are isolated incidents. The floor is yours. I want you to unleash your own tales of retail horror or mind-numbing customer logic in the comments below. Don't be shy. We need to know what you've witnessed. This is a support group now. If this descent into madness made you feel slightly better about your own life choices, repay us with a like and subscribe because the world is weird and we're here to document it all.